So, like you, I'm also a director. I just joined the board of Cloudflare, and I've been on the boards of other sort of smaller startups. But Cloudflare is a public company. 20% of the internet's traffic comes through our firewalls, and we provide a whole range of sort of cloud-ready services for all types of companies as well. And so let's dive in and first start with this notion of hype. There's a ton of hype about AI. And the way I want you to think about hype is in a very economic fashion. The hype is driven by two things. One is that there's the supply of AI has increased dramatically. There's lots of AI becoming available for all types of activities. The performance of this AI appears to increase exponentially. And then at the same time, the cost of the AI is also dropping radically as well. Like what it used to take us to do something with AI 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago is very different than what it takes us today. So there's a supply shock. At the same time, there's a demand shock as well, because every problem is becoming an AI problem. Law is an AI problem. Medicine is an AI problem. Drug discovery is an AI problem. Consulting is an AI problem. Education, dentistry, driving, everything has become an AI problem. And that's why we're seeing all this hype. Supply shock and demand shock simultaneously driving this frenzy about what AI is, both for the good and also, of course, for the bad. And how do we make sense of this? So one is our friendly neighborhood hyperscalers are investing dramatically. Like this kind of capex in cloud companies seems ridiculous. But that's what we're seeing. I think Microsoft is projected to invest close to $90 billion in capex alone. This is a software company because of what's happening with AI. And so one thing I want you to sort of keep in mind is that we all, as non-hyperscalers, can benefit from these investments, because what these investments are yielding is this tremendous increase in performance, right? This exponential performance. Every 6 months, every 9 months, every year, every 18 months, there's some doubling of some metric that happens. And so this quadratic or exponential, the math majors and us can argue about the exponent, but this is what we're sort of seeing. Now, the thing I want you to sort of keep in mind is that this increase in performance is not just about the bits and bytes. It's measured in bits and bytes and so forth, but it's really about something different. And I want us to sort of keep this in mind as we go forward. So you all look old enough to remember acoustic couplers and dial tone internet, right? The funny beeps you would do to get internet access in your homes. And then the modem speeds got better. And then, your cable provider provided you with cable modems. Then you got smartphones. And then you went from 1G to 2G to 3G to 4G to LTE to now 5G and blah, blah, blah. And so there was this improvement in technical performance over the last 30 years. And the translation of that to business benefit was there, but took a while. What is the benefit of doubling your internet speed? I don't know. We can probably figure that out over time, but it wasn't immediate. This technology is different because this is not just about flops and bits and so forth, or even the number of tokens being handled. It's really about what the argument I'll make is about expertise and the provision of expertise inside of your companies. And when you get a doubling in performance of AI models, it's a doubling of expertise becoming available to you and your organizations or to you individually. And that's the frame you need to be walking in with, that this technology is about expertise provision and capability provision that is very different from the prior generations of technology that we've had before. So again, in 2020, Marco and I wrote this book about competing in the age of AI. We were not talking about competing with AI. We weren't talking about AI bits and bytes. This is really a business book about strategy and leadership. And the idea being that the core of the enterprise is being transformed with data and algorithms and networks. And that's the argument we made. I graduated from my undergrad in the last century, like many of you. I worked at General Electric in the last century. And the GE of that time, Jack Welch's GE, was a member of at that time, is a very different company compared to the tech-first companies that we talk in our book. We talk about companies like Google and Tencent and Ant Group and so on and so forth that were built very differently. And the argument we made in the book is that AI is not about technology, but really about business architecture. And this is where you as board members matters, because you need to be thinking about business architecture for the boards you guys govern. And the business architecture has two components. There's a business model, how you create value and how you capture value. And then the operating model, which actually delivers the value to the business model. And that has implications for scale, scope, and learning, how you serve more customers, how you offer them many different things, and how do you keep improving. So this is where we saw AI mattering. AI was not about just the infrastructure, but it created new vectors for value creation, new vectors for value capture, and then, of course, new ways to scale value through your operating model. The example we use in the book to get it going was about Ant Financial, which was in many ways the PayPal for Alibaba, for eBay in China. Ant Financial grows to 1.2 billion customers in a very short amount of time with lots of products and services. But the surprising thing about Ant Financial is that it's got only 12,000 employees at this level. 12,000 employees servicing 1.2 billion users. I think I've been lucky to be in the U.S. since 1997. I came here from Canada, from Toronto, for my graduate school, stayed here, and it's been the same bank that's been acquired over and over and over again, consolidated and so forth. And my estimate was that for this bank to serve, it's one of the largest U.S. financial institutions, for this bank to serve 1.2 billion users, they probably need like 10 million employees or something, just in terms of scale, right? Versus the 12,000 employees here. The other thing they have, which is very interesting, is a very crazy metric, which is 310. They say that for any customer interaction inside of their organization, internally or externally, maximum 3 minutes. So 3 minutes maximum. 1 minute for any kind of approval needed for the customer transaction, and 0 human intervention. 310. Okay? Very ambitious target. So all of these products and services that they offer have to meet that metric. Now, there's no way they can meet this metric with just people at the core of the business. It has to be data and algorithms and AI driving this. So 310 is their mantra. I joke that my bank also has 310, but appears to me to be 3 months, 1 month, and 0 0 computers in the mix of it. And what I often tell directors is like, what's going to be your company's 310? What's the ambitious thing you can tell your management teams to think about that would be 310 like, that would drive performance and this kind of capability structure. So that's Ant Financial. And when we think about Ant Financial, what we saw was in the value creation, value capture side, they have 3 dimensions. They have product value, how good is the product or service that they're offering, things we all focus in on, the performance, features, reliability. But then also network value or ecosystem value, the value contributed by having them in an ecosystem where as more and more users come on board, as more and more suppliers come on board, the value of the product itself for each user also increases. And then also data value. How do you extract data from every single transaction that takes place in the company? And how does that make you smarter about the next interactions you have with your company? So these become the vectors of value, and they design their products and services, both the value creation, value capture, with all 3 dimensions at play: product value, network value, data value. Again, we walked through this in exhaustive ways inside the book. But then the operating model is also very interesting for a company like Ant. What we observe is that the data and algorithms are at the core of their business. So it's a platform with payments and credit and commerce and consumers, insurance. And the logic inside of the company is the more data, the better the algorithms. The better the algorithms, the better the service. The better the service, the more usage. The more usage, the more data, and that flywheel. And this flywheel is very important to unlock inside of companies. And more companies are getting there to start thinking about it in this way. The core of this company shifts from people to AI factory. Okay, so what we observed in our research was that the core of the organizations was this scalable analytics AI factory that was inside the organization. Now, many of the companies you guys serve on the boards of or govern or manage also have AI operations. By now, many companies have AI operations and data science operations and so on and so forth. But my complaint with most of the ones that I see is that they seem to be not industrialized, but highly boutique, highly haute couture, right? And if I sort of take that haute couture example to its limit, right? If you want to go to Chanel and get a haute couture dress made or an outfit made, you first have to book an appointment. You first have to apply, right? And they may not think you're a suitable enough person to even apply to get an appointment, right? So let's say you apply and you get an appointment. It'll take you 6 months to get an appointment. Then you'll go there, spend a couple of days in Paris, and they'll measure you up. And then they'll say, come back in 6 months or 9 months, and we'll have this beautiful outfit created for you that you basically only wear once. And it seems to me that many data science operations and AI operations are like that. They're boutique-y, they're haute couture. It's very hard to get their time. They're very busy. They may not take you. It takes them a long time to produce something, and it's so fragile that after one wear, it collapses. We need to change the mindset in our companies from this boutique haute couture operations to one of an AI factory, which has a data pipeline at its core, algorithm development, infrastructure development. And in the end, what the AI factory does is that it creates three things, and three things at scales. That's predictions. Think of your company as a network of predictions being made. Sales, marketing, finance, HR, those are all prediction tasks being done. AI factories can help us with our predictions. AI factories help us with pattern recognition. Think about all the people that are focusing on pattern recognition inside of your organization. And then finally, process automation. And that's what the AI factory does. Those are the products that come out of the AI factory. Just like a McDonald's factory produces hamburgers, an AI factory produces predictions, pattern recognition, and process automation. And the operating model core is about data and software and APIs and applications. We still have a massive role for humans, but they're on the edges of the organization, running these things, making sure they're operating properly and so forth. And just to give you an example, like when you use a service like Uber, right, you don't call a dispatcher. It's all the algorithms doing the work on the back end. The humans are on the edges of Uber in making the company work, for example. And our thesis in our book was that basically you have a collision happening between most companies in America today are basically siloed organizations with product unit businesses, with their own IT, with their own data, stuck up in this way. And for good reason. Silos are good. They help us focus, help us get stuff done. We're not encumbered by large bureaucracies. We can just get things going. And basically the idea here is that that gets transformed into a software stack and a data stack that basically moves us into a platform model, and that creates this collision between firms that can grow exponentially and firms that grow sort of in this concave fashion. And we saw this in our book in terms of as you compare Pfizer versus Moderna, HSBC versus Ant Group, Ford, Tesla, Merit, Airbnb. This is not one about low-end disruption. This is about collision of how you run your organization. There's a question about human in the loop. I think the human in the loop is very important here. And there's a big question. We'll come back to this at the end because I think there's a range of elements to think about human in the loops and have a framework around that as well. Human in the loop, we should think about both AI in the loop, human in the loop, no AI, and also fully agentic systems. And I'll offer you a framework to think through that as well. Okay, so that was the book. That's what laid the book out. It came out again 2020. I was just talking to our publisher this morning. They were trying to convince me to write my second book, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it. But they said that I was very lucky. Our book has done really well and has been one of the best performers they've had on technology and business in the last 5 years, and it still is quite relevant. Even though we didn't talk about generative AI at all in the book, because at that time, in 2020, the Gen AI tools were not ready. They were still very toy examples. They were Fisher Price type models, but now they've gotten quite good. So let's just put this all into context of the current moment. Okay, the current moment, what we're seeing is we're basically skating off 70 years of AI. Okay, starting up north here in Dartmouth in New Hampshire, cybernetic systems being invented in the 1950s, then trained expert systems, then machine learning, what I call good learners, and now generative systems. Machine learning era was one about prediction, right? You could eliminate spam from your email. You could get good recommendations for music, for books, for movies, for travel direction, for friends, for link. All of you are trying to get LinkedIn connections. Those are all part of the prediction systems that the machine learning era built, that the AI factory built at scale. But they made predictions about some future state, some future action. Generative systems can take that same baseline technology and instead of making a prediction about something, create brand new content. So the way I talk about it is that predictive systems could help you identify cat versus dog, spam versus not spam. Generative systems can create the image of the dog, can create the image of the cat, or create the email for you that could either be viewed as spam or highly effective ways to get introductions done in an email environment. And so generative systems do that. They create new content of all types. But really what's needed right now for us in many ways is to move away from just wholesale adoption of generative AI, but to actually be thinking about this in terms of clinical trials. And this is what I've been doing on my research side. We've been basically saying Gen AI is this new drug that's being introduced in our economy. We don't know the right dose. We don't know efficacy. We don't know side effects. We don't know dosage. We don't know the right diet you should be following, the toxicity you have, and all that kind of stuff. And so we need to come in and do these types of randomized controlled trials to help make sense of that. So let me tell you a bit about these RCTs, these randomized controlled trials, and what we're finding, and then what this implies for you all as directors. The first is a study we did at Boston Consulting Group, where we were looking at basically our graduates from the top elite MBA programs and PhD programs when they work at BCG. And what we're trying to understand is like, how do these folks work with AI in their jobs? And here's what we discovered. We discovered that Gen AI lies on this jagged frontier. It's a jagged technology, which means it can dramatically improve outcomes in one direction when it's inside the frontier. But if the technology is being used for things that are outside this frontier, unknowingly, it can drastically reduce performance. We did this as a clinical trial. So we have 750 BCG consultants working with us for the full day. We randomized them into two types of tasks. There was one around the inside the frontier, and this task was about new product development, creativity, analytical skills, persuasiveness, writing skills. And then we had a task that was really about a case study task focused in on analyzing data, analyzing a spreadsheet, understanding the nuances in interviews, and then coming up with a recommendation. So there was a right answer in the bottom task, and there was basically a creative answer on the top task. For the creative stuff, we saw something incredible. And I'm still blown away by this. The study is now 2 years old. And I'm still blown away by these numbers. So remember, our group are high elite MBAs, right? They graduate from Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, INSEAD, and so on and so forth. NYU, so on and so forth. And what you see is the blue curve is a control curve. The red and green are the treated curves. And what you see is this shift to the right of the distribution of performance. 12% more tasks got done. They were 25% faster and 40% higher quality results in our analysis of the tasks that they did for us, right? And the shift is dramatic. Basically, if you had no AI and you were of median ability, having AI pushed you to the 95th percentile in an already elite group. So this shift has been quite dramatic for us. At the same time, when you use AI for what it can't do, and the problem is people do it, right? Your performance will drop, of course, by definition. But to see it in action and how dramatic it was here. So what you see in this spreadsheet analysis task, which 2 years ago the OpenAI models could not do, now they can. They actually set up a secondary Python interpreter for you when they analyze the data using a deterministic machine and then bring back the results. it couldn't do that, but it still tried to analyze the data for you. And what we discovered is that 85% of the people in the control condition got the answer right. There was a right answer, but only 60% to 70% of the people in the treated conditions of Gen AI got the answer wrong. Right, so the 20% decline in performance with AI, and so I did a little video about this. I'm going to show this to you about how to think about this jagged nature of the technology. Let me just play that. I think I've got the audio turned on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I want to discuss a phenomenon I like to call falling asleep at the wheel. This term refers to a scenario where people become overly reliant on AI systems, leading to worse quality work and inaccuracies. In my laboratory for innovation sciences, Fabrizio Del Acqua produced a study called Falling Asleep at the Wheel. He found that as AI quality increases, humans are less likely to engage actively in the task. In other words, the better the AI, the more people tend to trust it blindly and reduce their oversight. This often leads to a paradox where high-performing AI can result in worse overall performance because humans are falling asleep at the wheel. I also led a large-scale experiment at Boston Consulting Group that found a similar phenomenon. Here, the consultants trusted the AI's outputs more because of its perceived high quality. However, this trust was misplaced, and they ended up producing incorrect and misleading results because they didn't scrutinize the AI's output thoroughly. Always keep your critical thinking hat on and don't fall into the trap of blindly trusting AI. It's your responsibility to ensure that the AI is aiding, not replacing your judgment.
Right. So I think this falling asleep at the wheel risk is real, and part of your governance needs to be, see, the issue right now is that mostly the tech organization is responsible for AI, but it actually has to be the business units. The business units actually need to do the AI evaluation to make sure that the tasks are being enhanced and we're not getting this falling asleep at the wheel response. And so I think this is part of the shift to think of AI not as a technology about bits and bytes and about speed and performance, but about work, about expertise. And so should your CIO and CHRO be joined at the hip? Right? And should they actually be the same person? Should they be, or a new hybrid role is created? Or how does that actually then interact with the business unit? These are all questions that I think all of us will be facing as we go forward. By the way, this is not me talking. This is my bot, right? This is an avatar of mine. You'll see I look very sleepy. My team sort of ambushed me one morning. They said, stand by the elevator doors and just talk about what you had for breakfast. I hadn't had coffee yet, but they recorded me anyway. And this is the handsy Karim. And the whole script was made by AI. And this is my avatar talking. I didn't say a single word here. And then more recently, with better models, I'm now able to speak, fluent Chinese.
大家好，我是 Karim Lakhani， 哈佛商学院教授，研究领域为创新、技术管理、数字化转型和人工智能。2022年11月 ChatGPT 的发布。大家好，我是 Karim Lakhani。
AI party tricks, but what's interesting here is that again, this is now $30 a month. You can record yourself talking and with the right intonation, speak in any language you want. And our online team has now used these avatars now to actually build a whole bunch of new content that we can scale very quickly in terms of our learnings. So now let's move. So before I've talked about the impact on individuals, let me push to bringing us to shift into teams, because that's where most of the work happens inside of organizations. This was a study with Procter & Gamble. Again, we partner very closely with these organizations to do the work. With P&G, the big headline is that AI is transforming from a tool to a teammate. And what do teams provide you? Teams provide you with performance. Working teams yields better outcomes than working on your own, provide you with complementary expertise, and provide you with sociality. And here's what we discovered. We set this up as an experiment inside of these 4 different business units at P&G. We set this up as team without AI and team with AI, but also an individual contributor with AI and without AI. The teams were a combination of an R&D and commercial folks. Here's what we discovered. First, on the performance side, an individual with AI performed just as well as a team without AI. Okay? This is important to note, right? And you sort of see that very clearly in this yellow bar as compared to the team no AI. Even though the bars are higher, there's no statistical significant difference between these two. And then teams with AI, although on average were similar to teams, individuals with AI, what's interesting is the teams with AI produce the best, highest quality ideas. Okay? So the top 10% of ideas that we evaluated mostly came from the teams with AI. So both there's an average effect and what we call an extreme value effect when it comes to AI. Now, what you should be thinking about though here is that, any of you that are CFOs or former CFOs, it's like, okay, great, individual with no AI, all of a sudden I can cut costs by 50%. Like, why do I have all these teams running around doing this thing? We should just give everybody an AI agent and do that. So of course that's going to be a natural reaction. And certainly for a bunch of tasks, that might be the outcome. But if you care about extreme value and high innovation outcomes, you would still want to put teams with AI in here. So it's worth thinking through that. Secondly, we see this expertise effect. So I'm going to just explain to you these two graphs because there's a little bit of detail and nuance here. On the left panel, what you see is the individual with no AI working away, and the x-axis measures the technicality of the solution, right? These are engineers and commercial people coming up with new product ideas for P&G. And as you would expect, the R&D people who are yellow skew to the right, so they have more technical solutions, and the commercial people skew to the left because they have more less technical solutions. Makes sense. These are individuals with no AI. But the individual with AI basically overcomes this bias and creates balanced solutions. And these balanced solutions look just like the solutions that are produced by teams at Procter & Gamble. Okay? So the missing expertise is available. So individuals plus AI produce more balanced ideas that were similar to teams. And then secondly, the other effect was that in our 758 people, 800 people that we have in this study, what we discovered is that there were some people that had lots of experience with new product development and some that had a little bit of experience with new product development. Well, now that experience deficit goes away. It helps the people without that missing expertise to come through. So again, if you think about job design, team design, how does an R&D function now go to market faster by having access to these bots? Those become big, big questions for us. And this study was commissioned by the head of R&D for Procter & Gamble, Victor Aguilar, because he was focused on saying, right now, the interface between R&D and marketing is too fraud, takes too long, and so on and so forth. I just want to push my teams to go further and faster. To push this through. And the third bit is that humans with AI, we found more positive emotions and negative and fewer negative emotions in using those tools as well. So now, what does this mean for all of this? What we're observing is that the AI models are improving exponentially. Okay, but companies are absorbing linearly. And this is creating a big problem because if this is a story about expertise and expertise is doubling every 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, but you're only absorbing this in a linear fashion, you'll just be in a deficit compared to your competitors who might be adopting this faster. And the adoption is not the similar adoption worlds of the internet era that we had, right? Or the mobile phone era. Remember, you guys all went through decisions about should we have mobile phones for our employees? Should we have internet for our employees? Should we allow browsers for our employees? Should we have Wi-Fi for our employees? Those were all board level decisions. But those were, in the end, not consequential to the nature of work being done. People adapted and used those tools. And if you waited a year or 2 years, you were fine. Here, this matters because what's going on is that this is about expertise. So you're missing out on the expertise. And when you have new expertise becoming available, it should change your work process. And the work process change is what I think most people are missing here. So how should you be thinking about AI? First is what I want you to sort of have a perspective on is that the AI is lowering the cost of some key input. And as I've hinted, AI is lowering the cost of expertise. But it's similar to the last 30 years of the internet and mobile era, right? The browser lowered the cost of information transmission, consumption, and production, right, to zero. This meeting we're having right now with 170 people, right, 30 years ago, pre-internet, would require us to have met either in person, so fly ourselves down to Austin or wherever, right, and have the meeting. Or we could do this on broadcast, but each of us would need a camera operator, a sound person, and a satellite truck. And it would cost us $10,000 per minute per person to be able to pull that off. Now you don't think twice about joining a Zoom room because the internet lowered the marginal cost of information transmission and lowered the marginal cost of information consumption. And then we lived in a world of information glut, and Google and Baidu provide us now with search engines to find the right information. Napster. Some of you still may have some illegal music in your hard drives. What Napster did is it showed us what would happen when the song got unbundled from the album and delivery became online. Steve Jobs comes in with a new business model. The new business model makes him charge 30% of all music revenues. And then Spotify comes in with the subscription model. iOS and Android showed us what would happen in a cloud-first environment for software development, lower the cost of software development and distribution. Remember, you would go to Sears and buy software in boxes and get paper cuts. And now you just download it online, and then you get massive innovation on TikTok. So the question we've been asking is, what is AI reducing the cost of? And for us, AI is reducing the cost of expertise. And remember, companies are just bundles of expertise. I've given you empirical RCT level evidence about the expertise cost reduction. It's giving us this kind of expertise cost reduction. And if companies are just bundles of expertise and that cost is declining, then all of a sudden we're a brand new game. So the framework that I want you to have is imagine just a Gaussian distribution, a normal distribution of expertise. We want people in the right tail in our companies, but typically we get a normal distribution. And then with AI, what happens is that the left tail will get cut off, because if you know how to use the AI, you will be at the average of the AI and will extend further down. And the question becomes, what happens to the folks that are on the right tail and the left tail of the human distribution? How do we think about that? How do we bring this in? What does this mean for our workers and our organization? There will be replacement. You all need to spin up with it. Like, some jobs will go away, should go away. Mary Erdos at JP Morgan says, eliminate the no joy work, get rid of that and transform the jobs. So we see replacement, we're going to see augmentation. You have new capabilities in jobs for people, the Iron Man suit for knowledge workers, and then the transformation. New roles will get created, new positions will get created, new things will be redefined. And I think it's our responsibility as board members to get our management teams to think a lot about augmentation and transformation. Yes, replacement will happen, but their promise to their companies and to their associates needs to be about, we're going to help you navigate through this era, give you the skills and capabilities where you may have a job with us or somewhere else, but that this world is showing up in our doorsteps. We imagine a world where basically every person gets empowered by AI agents. That's already happening. Those of us that are on the bleeding edge of using AI, I've got a whole bunch of agents that do very specific tasks for me. But also it could be a world where agents become bosses as well. And the Uber example I gave you is one where the algorithm is the boss, right? The algorithm hires people, the algorithm allocates tasks to people, it rewards people, it pays people, it fires people, it does all of that. Oftentimes when I'm in large company settings, I'll say, okay, everybody close their eyes, and then say, raise your hand if you don't like your boss. About 50% of the people raise their hands, they don't like their boss. Okay, good. How many of you want an agent boss? Yes, because my boss won't be as capricious, won't be as mercurial, will be more fair, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So I think this world is coming to our companies now. Our view is that you as board members need to think about AI's impact on operations, on the organization, and also on the strategy. The strategy function now needs to not just consider you and your competitor, but also you with AI compared to where the AI is itself. Okay? Because the AI capabilities are improving every 6 months, every 9 months, every 12 months. And the strategic questions your company needs to ask itself is what can actually now be done by AI that we don't need to do anymore? And really own it and make it happen. What are you uniquely good at, and what do you need to evolve to stay ahead of the AI? And finally, what new opportunities are possible, and how do we capture them? Now, I just want to end with this view. There's a leadership playbook for AI that I think is important for all of you to follow as well. And we've had experience with all these companies in making this happen. First is you got to learn about AI. And it's not about AI and the bits and bytes, which is where I think most of the education goes to. It needs to be about what AI means for business. And this one framework that I offer you is about expertise. And you need to take that seriously to say, what does it mean if this is really an expertise shock? And how do we think about that for business? What does this mean for our business model and our operating model? The second thing I want you to do is that you all need to get good at using AI yourself, personally, doing AI. Because if it's about expertise, then you don't want somebody else to build your AI tools. You need to build your own agents because you know your expertise the best and you want to augment it the best. So what I say to board directors, for CEOs and so forth is AI will be done by you, not for you. You have to do the AI, which requires you to do the damn work. Sorry, excuse my French. So doing is important. Then you got to do imagining, right? Once you can learn and do, then you will know what are the new operating and business models. It won't just be slideware. You will have had experience in building these tools so you can really imagine what it takes. Then it's all about change and change management. This is, to be up on that curve, you need to be continuously be changing because new expertise comes in, you continue changing the work processes. So how do you build change resilience and change skills for everyone? And the last bit is caring. People are worried about their jobs. People are scared about their careers. And am I doing all this AI work to train the bot to take over my job? So you really have to take this view about caring and what does it mean to belong to this company that is going to transform using AI, but what happens to them? And I can tell you AI fails at the front lines if you don't pay attention. So with that, I'll stop and then we can have a conversation.